Welcome everyone at Mapping Capabilities, the first edition of a 3-series called Relevant Response. I am Sahar Shirzad. I'm a program maker and specialized in international law. In that department, I'm mostly active as a human rights activist. And I recently wrote an article. People are still coming in. Welcome. Take seated and be quiet because we also have a live stream going on. I wrote an article concerning the double standards when it comes to the war of Ukraine and how refugees were welcomed. Because before that, I was also active fighting for the rights of, for example, the refugees in Moria and also in Afghanistan. Amsterdam Museum saw that article and also asked me to be co-creator of this program because apart from refugees' rights, also looking at, as a program maker active in the art and culture sector, there was also a response in the art and culture sector. And most specifically tonight, we're going to talk about the response in Amsterdam. There has been an immediate and overwhelming amount of solidarity visible in Amsterdam concerning the war in Ukraine. This solidarity is heartwarming for some and maybe questionable for others. When we look at conflicts of the past decades, why does this one cultivate visible solidarity? This question is more specifically relevant to individuals in the art and culture sector originating maybe from non-Western conflict areas, representing a significant amount of this sector. How are they affected by this immediate response? To develop a relevant response and an inclusive and appropriate one takes self-reflection and dialogue with the ones who carry the war within their identities. This program facilitates dialogue for self-reflection, inviting everyone who is engaged in the art and culture sector in Amsterdam. Vereist speakers will cover the following questions. What can cultural institutions do in times of political conflict with war and violence worldwide? How do we define our role and how do we respond in a relevant and inclusive way? What helpful practices can we share? Who should we involve in the process? What are the vulnerabilities of doing so? And can we develop practices that align with our principles as individuals, but maybe also as institutions? Because there are also very big institutions in the art and culture sector, more specifically also in Amsterdam. And I would also like to say that this night is entirely interactive. We will work in groups in the second part, then the live stream will be turned off. But the persons who are present with us, welcome. Who are present with us here live will be able to work in groups, and we will have a Zoom session where the people who are in the live stream will be able to do a session with one of my colleagues here. This program is initiated by Amsterdam Museum, as I said, and Pakhuis de Zwijger. Together they recognized a need for this conversation to take place. And I would also like to invite them because we will do a kickoff talk about why there was this need that they recognized and the necessity that we should talk about this all together. And this would be a kickoff for the interactive part altogether. And oh yeah, I would also like to ask you to immediately ask questions if they pop up. Then I would like to invite Egbert Fransen, founder and director of Pakhuis de Zwijger, and Emma Waslander, program maker at Amsterdam Museum. So,
hi.
Can you tell us in your own words how this idea came about? And as I said, there was this need that you recognized to talk about this, at least within your own organization. But I think there was a bigger need that you saw in the city, perhaps maybe even countrywide. But yeah, tell us in your own words what you recognized.
Try to keep it short because I think the way we moved towards this program was a period of time where insights were followed up very quickly. as Amsterdam Museum, we found ourselves in a situation where we were about to open a new location, which was situated at Amstel 51, where Hermitage at that time was also situated. So a lot, of course, when the invasion of Ukraine came along, and we started to question what's our position in this, and how can we do this correctly? How can we, have a relevant response in that sense of that specific situation at that time? But afterwards, we also had a lot of conversation with people who work for us. Me and my colleagues. I just started working for the Amsterdam Museum in February, so very short time I was there, but. We started to talk about how do we respond in these situations, and how do we look at ourselves as a cultural institution that reflects the city, because these situations of conflict, war, violence, they affect our city, they affect Amsterdam directly, and they have been doing so for many, many, many years. But you can see, and this is also, I think, the reason you wrote your piece for One World, is that you can see a difference in reaction, and also the weight that it carries, and how we collectively also respond to these situations. I think there was a very clear statement from cultural institutions Amsterdam-wide, but also in the world, to this situation in particular. But we started to wonder, how do we want to grow and try to be self-reflective about this, and try to do better also in new situations, but also see what we can still do in situations that are currently also going on in the world. So if that sums it up a little bit.
Yes, of course. And you mentioned that as a museum, you reflect the city. I can imagine that you wanted to partner up with someone or a place that does the similar thing. So I guess that's how you also came to Pakhuis. Maybe Egbert, you can tell us how you found that the argument of Emma, and also the reason to start this self-reflection, perhaps to call it, was very valid.
Well, we know each other as cultural institutes, and working quite often together. So it was good to have contact so fast about this. Same as Amsterdam Museum, we are busy with programming about all things happening in our city. So if things happening like a war in Ukraine, but before the war in Syria and Afghanistan and other places in the world, it comes into the city as well. So it comes to the city by coming people in, refugees coming into our city. So it's you can see it, you can feel it, you can. Everybody is talking about it, but it's also happening in the city by all these different people, all these migrants that were coming in after all these decades, hundreds of years. So the world is also inside Amsterdam every day. So yes, there is a war. There are constantly conflicts over the whole world, but those conflicts are also in our city. So when these
I think that's beautiful what you're saying. So you're saying it's in our city because it's also within the people who came and migrated here, for example, from places of conflict and war. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, during all those decades, but also during all those hundreds of years, because we are a migrant city. So the whole world is in our city. Those 180 or 185 nationalities there are in Amsterdam. So everything is here. So if there are happening things over in the world, like these kind of wars, it's coming into your city. So you have to respond, and we try to respond, and that's why it's good to realize that all cultural institutions, all societal organizations have to respond because they are the city. So that's why it is great that we came together and thought it over and connected also to a couple of other cultural institutes. So last week we came together with the first 10 of us just to think it over. And now we are here to start up a series of talks and dialogues about it.
Yeah, I think it's good to mention that it's very experimental. And I think last week when we met up with a couple of organizations here in Amsterdam, that we figured out that there wasn't really a moment before that we did something like this. So I've got the feeling that we're learning along the way, but also try to be sharp on that. We want to make this concrete. We really want to make the effort and make the actions.
Have a different conversation maybe than that we keep having when it comes to crises.
Not keeping it at the table, but really, work from what we can do as organization, but also supporting each other. Because I think, in my opinion, I think we don't work together enough in Amsterdam, and we have so many organizations here present, not only here but also in the city, of course. And I think that if we keep working from our own lanes, we can really, I hope, in this program map what all our capabilities are, and then matchmake or try to show the effort and make it work and make it practical.
Well, you explained the title of today as well.
There you go.
But interesting because this isn't the first crisis that we experienced. Bigger even, we just had COVID pandemic. I mean, Afghanistan happened not a year ago, and over the past decades, there are so many conflict areas where the same acute urgency for help was needed. How come the art and culture sector most specifically felt the need to respond through solidarity when it comes to this one? Why was this one too many is what I was wondering.
Why this
and
one?
And also inviting everyone to be interactive with us, because I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
As Ekra said, we talked with several parties involved in the city that are also a culture and art from the art sector in Amsterdam, such as Framer Framed, Foam, and some others that are also present here at Amsterdam Storytelling Center. So if you feel the need to respond, please just raise your hand and then I will give you the floor. Yeah, but back to you. The relationship between crises and art and culture. Why was this one too many, do you think?
I think because we've all seen that this situation has got so much attention, and I think it's wonderful to see what is possible. Like, all companies, the whole country, the whole world was in immediate action, and I think that's great to see that that is possible. But also what you wrote in your piece, very stunning, to find out that this all along was possible, but we picked out situations where we did respond and did not respond. And I think now comes a time where we can be really reflective about this together. Like, it's a hard time for arts and culture. Like, we're already dealing with so much. But this is also a time where I think these things can, starting from vulnerability, can really make something, let something grow out of this.
Yes.
And and I think arts and culture are the way to do that. I think it's the first thing you can grasp towards, because it's the language we need.
Yeah.
And it's already all in there. And we of course, for decades we're making exhibitions about people with a refugee background, and we're showing it to the people. But I think it's also very important to have these conversations with our organization and to try to find ways to integrate that within our own.
Are you saying we should go inward first before we externalize the stories and externalize?
Well, I think it's too late for that already. We're also doing it to the outside world already. Yeah. But I think we must not forget that we need to, if we take a stance, then let's do that with everybody that works with us.
To you, Egbert, do you think that there was a...
relate to each other and
Yeah.
talk about it and learn from each other because every day is a new day in a new situation with new people around you. So we really have to open up and have a strong dialogue about it, because it's not the last time it's happening in the world, and it's with the polarization going on in our society, and we really need to open up and talk to each other and find out what's behind our thoughts and behind our way of doing, responding on things, etc. So we need to ask questions every day, and especially in our sector where it's all about storytelling. And what kind of stories do we want to tell, and what we want to share with others, and so I think it's our core business.
Yeah, and when you talk about that we need to have a dialogue, I hear actively talking to each other, but do we listen enough to the right people? So who are we talking to, and who are we listening to in this particular sector specifically? Because it feels like there was this chain reaction, not only politics but commerce, fashion, even fashion, which usually is supposed to be politically neutral. But art and culture sector, the big Rijksmuseum having a big flag, that was very overwhelming to me. So when it comes to the art culture sector, does our evolving go through listening, and isn't it supposed to have a slower process than all the other sectors that have this quick response to this?
Well, this is the example, I think, what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
We really wanted, Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, okay.
Yeah,
Stop
so
it.
just in short, like we really wanted to make this program like, okay, so first edition, we'll have actions, we'll have matchmakings, like we're going to do this. And then we just found out like, oh no, we need more time to think this through, to get everybody on board, to see how we can support each other. So so this is kind of the example of exactly what you're saying,
and asking ourselves who is on board. So I think we need a lot of people to come on board and to talk and listen to each other, and not only some specific people or some specific institutions. So we really have to open up.
Yes.
Yeah, and share that responsibility feeling.
Can you wait, because there's a mic and we have a live stream. So if you want to ask a question or have a statement, over here.
Who is it?
First row. Thank you, Romy.
All right.
Yes. Hi.
Hi. I don't. I think it's. I just want to. Okay, so now I'm getting nervous.
Okay.
I think it's maybe also important to note that it's more of an action than maybe a response, because the response is in the about the things in the past, what has happened, what has gone wrong, what shouldn't have happened, and how it seems like we, in general, not in this thing, but in general, we keep on discussing the things that have happened, that have gone wrong, instead of focusing that energy of why did this happen or didn't this happen, or why is this the war that brings to attention to that this is going on. Instead, redirect that energy indeed in finding the structures, and then instead of asking why, just ask, okay, so not even ask, just do how. I'm bad at formulating. How do we take action exactly?
To do it better for all. So
so we know what went wrong.
Yeah,
and in general, we all want action. So.
Because what I kind of wanted to know, because earlier you said that cultural sector is having a hard time anyway. So what I kind of feel in this sense, in this setting, and culturally, it's pretty much an okay stance to be pro-Ukraine. It's like there's no for a big cultural museum to take a stance in Afghanistan and Iraq, it's more difficult because NATO was involved in those countries. Like we were at war there, so we were all. So that makes it more complex to take a stance against a war where our government is pro that war. So I think that is sort of one of the major issues here, that it's almost impossible sometimes as a cultural sector that is suffering, that is in need of a big audience, to take a stance when the stance is not easy to, well, for me, like, I feel like it's obvious you don't want any human suffering. Like, I don't care if it's in Iraq or in Ukraine, and I don't understand why that's not a global idea. But anyway, so I think that is sort of one of the issues that is happening here, that there is so a one-sided acceptance in this regard,
because
and
of
not
the common enemy,
exactly,
and the geopolitical relationship that you're having.
Yeah,
thank you.
And that, I think, is with like Palestine and like Palestinian issue. It's like it's more it's more complex. You cannot, as a big organization, say like I'm pro.
But that's interesting that you bring that in. So then maybe we should talk about how independent are we in our role as an art and culture sector, and can we afford it to be independent and have these statements? I mean, can you imagine having Rijksmuseum have a big Palestine flag out? That makes, that is for some reason way more controversial than now because of perhaps the common enemy. But should we, my question then is, should we give in to that pressure that we are a part of this political tense situation, climate, and I mean, is it complex? Is war complex, or are we making it complex? So my question would be, what is our role as the art and culture sector? And do we give in to that pressure? Yeah. Do you want to react again? Yeah. Wait. Live stream?
Okay, so my question is, I think, to you and then to you. So do you think that it's mostly kind of fear-driven, that some institutes don't feel the confidence to just go on and take a stand, because eventually they do get money from the government that is pro it, and also audience. But how do you think that? Do you even think that can cut loose from each other?
I hear that someone next to you wants to respond. Yeah. I don't know if the live stream sees who's reacting, but it's somebody else then who just reacted. But that's okay. Yeah. Continue.
Yeah, I think I cannot speak for a big organization, since Framer Framed is, I think, not a very large organization, but for us it is quite easy to speak out. I think it is a luxury in the Netherlands that we can speak out as cultural organizations, and we should take that freedom. And we recently had the Court for Intergenerational Climate Crimes. And ING was at stand, the Dutch state was there. And actually someone had to tell me, like, okay, but you get national funding. Is that not awkward that you're doing this? But I really did not think about it at all before that. Because I think it's our responsibility to do these kind of things.
And can I ask you, how do you create that space where you can react to these? Yeah.
By taking it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can only make space by just taking the space.
Just doing it.
Yeah, you have to do it. And also in other complex situations, when we speak out about Hong Kong or Palestine, or I think we have that responsibility. And when you look around and you have collaborations with international organizations, you realize that it is really, really a luxury that we can speak out, and we should.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful what you're saying. But I hear that. Can I maybe ask you another question? Would you say that our responsibility as art and culture sector is a different form of responsibility than other sectors? Can I just have the mic for her again? I'm sorry.
No, not our responsibility is different, but I think we have a situation that we have that freedom, and some other sectors have less freedom because we are even though we get finance from the ministry, there is always a situation that there is an institute in between us and the ministry. So we have a Raad voor Cultuur, or we have an AFK in between. So that is there.
In order for you to take the liberty.
That we can take these kind of positions. And that's super important, I think.
Yeah, so maybe recognizing the power structures already giving us the ability to take that freedom, to take that space. Yeah, thank you. We shouldn't censor ourselves, is someone saying here. Thank you. Last response, because we are actually running out of time.
We have the luxury to do it, so it's no question.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful. There's one here, and then one here, and then we have to round up this part.
So besides that you have the physical space to give a reaction, which I think gives you a responsibility to react, I also think that some issues like human rights are now considered, taking a stance for protecting human rights, are now being considered as activism, which is just a basic right. So I think even on the very basic things that everybody can agree on, from Rijksmuseum to Framer Framed, or those are the basics. And at least in these issues, you should take a position and be fierce about it. So even let's find a common ground to start with that nobody is scared of, but which is already being put in a certain corner of activism, which it might not even be. Just speak up when you can.
Yeah, maybe this is the opportunity to have precedents for that standing, the common ground that we can find. And Romy, can I please ask you to give the mic to...
So the question is, what's wrong with activism?
Yeah,
well,
that's the question, right?
The question is it, because not the live stream can hear, is it even activism if it's such a basic common ground that we need to partake in when it comes to human rights, basic human rights even? Yeah.
Yeah, but in a way it is activism to speak out and not to be quiet or still. So it's I think it needs a kind of active role and coming out of your what do you say it? Passive role,
your passive
role to speak out, to connect to others, to organize a force. Even it is common ground. Then also.
What I understood there, I understand what you're saying, Egbert, but what I understood there is if we create this climate where there's this big common ground that this is the basic human rights that we move from, that it wouldn't even be considered as activism anymore because it's not speaking out, it's something that we collectively do. Is that what I'm speaking for you, but maybe it's something that we can agree on, yeah. Oh, in the... Can you maybe?
Yeah, but it's a truer belief of your practices, right?
Yeah. But there's also the reality of those treaties not being adhered to, and then it becomes activism because there are breaches of basic human rights in very specific areas. Yeah. We're really running out of time, so maybe over here.
Oh, I just wanted to call into attention another event that happened at the start of the year, and that of course it's not related to the human rights topic, but it's about call to action that I think was very interesting, and that was the hair salon yoga takeover that happened in January, and in which some of us participated as well. And it's something that had no precedent, and it's something in which big institutions also participated, and it also wants institutions that have big state support and that are well known. And why would that was very successful? Why couldn't we do that in have a similar creative response, but for these types of issues? What can we do and adjust? Because it's a successful case, and we can build from that.
Yeah.
But including, of course, the human rights addition that we want to make.
Yeah. Do you want to shortly react to that, Emma, and then we have to round up?
I think my answer would be too long, but try to make it short. I think I did not work for the museum at that time, but we were also taking part in this big action where we, let our voices be heard in this situation, which was very directly around us, of course. But I think we have to open up that all situations are directly around us, but we're closing our eyes for some. And, different situations are affecting that, like affinity bias, media. But I think we have to be very open and to sense that it is in the city. Every situation that affects the world is also affecting Amsterdam. And we proved that we could do this.
Yeah, and it's also what Egbert said, right?
Yeah.
The world is within our city. I thought that was a beautiful quote. I really need to round up this part, but I do have to say I am very happy and excited to see that we started this interactive part. It's a good kickoff for the second part where we work in groups. I would like to thank Egbert and Emma for kicking off this together and also taking the initiative to organize this. Now we come to a part where we'll have an intermezzo with Marjolein van Heemstra. She is our city poet. In Dutch is onze stadsdichter. And she has a poem for us today, and I will do a short Q&A with her after. Marjolein?
So unfortunately, it's in Dutch, but I think it will be. Are there any English-speaking people here, or someone? You. You. So you will not understand this, but I can explain afterwards.
Yeah.
I was asked to write this poem by the Parool. It's the newspaper of Amsterdam. And we will talk about it maybe later. I was a little bit surprised because it was only my second poem as a city poet, and they really wanted a poem about the situation in Ukraine. And I also read it at the Dam, the big manifestation, and it made me a little bit uncomfortable. But we'll talk about that. So it's called...
In between, sorry,
Yeah.
I just have to say to the online, there are no subtitles, but there will be when you watch it back. So that's just what I wanted to say for the people who speak English live with us.
Or you can wait for my international translation. So it's called De Eerste Zes. When the first six arrived, refugees. De eerste 6 kregen een bed en ruime plek op de voorpagina van een krant in de stom toevallige stad van Landing. Onder hen een jonge vrouw met een profiel vol vakantiekiekjes. Haar reis werd halverwege vlucht. Ze arriveerde met de zee nog in haar haren, een tas vol zomerjurkjes. De eerste 6. Een getal zo klein vergeleken bij wat er op het spel staat. De hele rammelende wereldorde van ego's en grenzen. 6 namen zijn makkelijk te onthouden. 6 lichamen passen rond een middelgrote tafel en vormen volgens onderzoek het ideale aantal voor een missie naar Mars. Een kleine crew door geweld uit zijn baan geslingerd. Niet langer die vredige cirkel van huis naar ergens naar huis. In schuifelpas naar onbestemd nu, die wankele mars van miljoenen. Als het gaat zoals het vaker gaat, zullen we ze hier met versleten knuffels overspoelen en nederigheid verwachten. Maar misschien zal het dit keer anders zijn. Maakt hun aanwezigheid bescheiden. Geven wij niet wat we makkelijk missen, maar vragen we wat nodig is. En zwijgen voor even als zij praten.
Thank you. Can you maybe, you said we're going to talk about this after the poem. Can you tell us a little bit how this poem came about? And I know you as an observer. You observe the reactions and you've observed a lot as well when it comes to solidarity in this city. Yeah, and can you also tell us how that feeling after writing the poem evolved about this solidarity?
Well, first of all, of course, it's very clear, I think, all of us here, that I want to show my solidarity for this in this situation. It's horrible what's happening, and I feel very much for that. But at the same time, I think a lot of people here share this. I was really stunned by all the flags, and I'd been on a vacation, and I came back, and there was all these Ukrainian
when you
flags.
came back,
And it hurt me a little bit because we all know what's going on. We all know how many people suffer in how many places, and it really amazed me that so many big institutions were just so sort of. I was really stunned by it. Maybe because I'd been away for a week, so I was sort of out of it, and then I came in, and it made me think of something that maybe I can bring into the discussion.
Yeah, because you also you're a writer. I didn't introduce what you do more. You're more than a city poet.
Well, I write a lot about time and space, as you know, and space travel and time travel. Well, but then also about long-term thinking. And I was thinking that actually, for example, the reason I wrote this poem is because I was asked to. And I was asked to because there was so much in the media. So everyone was talking about it. And then the Parool they wanted me to talk about it as well. So they were a little bit annoyed that I hadn't written it yet, calling me up, like, where is the Ukrainian poem? And I thought, so then I wrote it. And I think it happened like that. I mean, I feel what I wrote, but I think it happened to a lot of us. So you feel like it's a response because someone is asking. It's like an immediate response. And here, I hope I can explain this right, but I have the feeling that we talk about activism all the time, but we never talk about how activism is actually related to our neoliberal capitalist way of living. Yeah. It's like you have to consume, you have to produce, you have to react, you have to respond. There's no time.
Quick.
It's quick. Yeah. It's quick because if it's quick, you cannot think. Yeah. And you cannot actually change something, because if you were fast, there's no way you can take a detour, because you will.
Do you think that as an art and culture sector, we are supposed to be quick, or should we?
Well, I would say both. Yeah. I mean, it's good to react. It's good to be activistic. Is that a word? Yeah. I don't know. But at the same time, I wanted to show this little thing.
Yeah, there's a.
Is it here?
Part of your book?
Yeah, so I don't know, maybe someone knows this. It's not mine, I stole it. It's from Stuart Brand. It's this old white man. Sometimes they have good ideas. But then it's a pace layering. So he actually says he recognizes 6 pace layers that the world sort of goes through. And there's this lovely interpretation that he wrote with it, which I like very much. He actually says you need all these layers in the world, and if they are not all respected, you lose balance. And you can immediately see that we do not at all respect all these layers. But the nicest thing is that this interpretation. So you see, it's from fast to slow, and you see that culture is very slow. And you can ask yourself, is art part of fashion or is it culture? I would hope maybe both, right? We also want to be in the deep layers of the people, of the mind. And then here's this. So he says, fast learns, slow remembers. Fast proposes, slow disposes. Fast is discontinuous, slow is continuous. Fast and small instructs slow and big by accrued innovation and by occasional revolution. Slow and big controls small and fast by constraint and constancy. Fast gets all our attention, slow has all the power. And I think that's such an interesting way of looking at processes.
So this could also be a power structure.
It is, yeah. It's sort of how the world works, and it's all necessary. So it's no use saying we shouldn't be fast, or you should be everything together. But it's very interesting, I think, to think about what these big institutions like Rijksmuseum is obviously, I mean, that's culture, that's slow. But then, and they suddenly respond this quick. But the whole sector did. So where I think I really like this initiative. And I think this is a sign that there's also on the deeper levels, there's this sort of slowness now of thinking about this, talking about this. And am I taking too much?
No, not at all. I would really be strict on that. We
7
are running a little bit later,
Yeah.
but we took that into account. So don't rush
This
yourself.
is maybe just something
but,
to take with us, you know.
it's very important. I think this, what I asked you is to open our minds before we go into the session. I think you are doing more than that even. I would like to ask you a last question. I think some of us really want to have this handout and, and take it with them because they're already inspired. At the end of the poem, you say in Dutch, maybe humility is what suits us now. I'm directly translating. I hope I do it correctly. It's your poem, but maybe it's time to have humility and to listen instead of maybe respond to the needs of such as a refugee in what we think they need by giving them our stuff that we don't need anymore, or I don't know, just these quick responses. So how do you think, in your opinion, the art and culture can take that role?
Well, I really like this initiative. I like sitting here, thinking together, and maybe thinking about the questions we can ask instead of the responses we have to give. Maybe think about long-term initiatives that can actually, because if you talk about, I was just looking up the etymology of solidarity, and I thought it's funny how there's something solid in the word. So it's about strengthening something. So if we want to be solidaire, what's that in English? If we want to show solidarity, it's about you want to strengthen someone or some group, or you want to sort of be there, right? Like, stand with them.
To have a solid chain almost, or a front.
So,
that's how it sounds.
And I really don't think you do that by waving a flag. You just don't.
Yeah.
Because you have to take the flag down some point, right? You're not forever going to have that flag. And then what did you strengthen exactly?
So I think you're thinking more long term. What is more sustainable?
Yeah, because these people are, people who take refuge here. It's been said they've been here for hundreds of years. And every time we have this new people coming in, it's always like, oh, what do we do? What do we do?
As if we have
scale
to invent
down,
something
we
again.
scale up, and you can also say as a society or as a sector, like, okay, so we have
It's a continuum.
It's a continuous thing.
Yeah.
There's always people on the run. There's always people seeking shelter.
Yeah.
How can we, for all these people, sometimes they come from this place, sometimes from this place. How can we, in our structure, build in a space for people like that? No matter where they come from, no matter the hype.
Yeah. I think you really opened our minds. Thank you for that. And I think we can take this with us. It's like, what is the definition of solidarity? What role fits in best for us in that? And how does that reflect in our policy? And as a art and culture sector, how do we slow down and when do we move fast? Thank you. Thank you. Can I have a big round of applause for Marjolein? I hope you will participate in our sessions. This is the part, unfortunately, for the live stream where the live stream stops, but there is a Zoom link. If you are watching through YouTube, you can go to the website of Pakhuis. There's a symbol of Zoom link, and you can click that and participate in the sessions together with a colleague of mine. Over here, we will have instructions in how we are going to have those sessions. But for now, I want to say goodbye to the live stream, and thank you for watching this part of the program.